Thank you. And thank all of you for being here today. I appreciate the privilege of being able to share with you November the 22nd, 1963. While it's painful, I feel that it's also necessary because the murder of our president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, is still an open murder case in Dallas County, Texas. And I hope, now, as you listen to me, understand that I'm a natural blonde, okay? And I still have hopes that two things are going to happen. One, that I'm someday, before I leave this world, I'm going to be able to see my film, which was confiscated on the 25th of November. And secondly, that I get to get on a witness stand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God, and see justice done for the murder of our president. We are one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. And people, that does mean justice for presidents who are murdered in downtown Dallas, too. And if we don't fight for it, we will not get it. If we ever shut up, we will not get it. And people are continuously asking me, Beverly, why do you keep on riding a dead horse? Number one, it's not a dead horse. It's a dead president that was shot 20 feet in front of me. It's not a dead horse. And I'm getting old. I'll just go ahead and tell you so you don't have to do the math. I'll be 67 years old March the 14th. I'm getting old. Most all the people down there, except for the Newmans and myself, as far as I know, are dead. There's got to be a torch to pass this burden on to. There's got to be somebody, a torchbearer, to take it over when we're all gone. And please keep that flame burning. Like I said, I was a 17-year-old child who thought I knew everything, like all 17-year-olds do. And I worked at the Colony Club in downtown Dallas, which was next door to Jack Ruby's Carousel Club. And I adored President and Mrs. Kennedy. They were the first presidents born in my century, and they were absolutely stunning. And they had such class. And at 17 years old, I was trying to decide what I believed politically. And I was just so enamored with them. And so when the chance came that President Kennedy was coming to Dallas, Texas, I was going to do anything and everything I could to see them. And the night before, I went to a party with Jack Ruby. Now, I never officially worked for Jack Ruby as on his paychecks, but I did tend bar for him after hours, for his after hours parties. I did go out of town with him on occasion as his arm dress. No, I don't know if he was homosexual or not, and I didn't care. Back then, it was no big deal. He never even put the pass on me because I was 17 years old. I was jailbait. But I looked pretty good back then, and I made a nice arm piece. But the night before, I went to a party with Jack and met several interesting people, and maybe I'll talk about that later. And the next morning, I rode a cab from Fort Worth over to the parking lot next door to the Colony Club where we parked our cars by the month. And I got out and put on my walking shoes, and I got a bag out of the back of the car that still had my bikini in it from the summer. It was one of those straw bags. I know you ladies that are as old as I am and will remember those straw bags we used to put everything in. And then I realized it was chilly, so I put my coat on over the bag. And even through hypnotism, I can't remember when I took the bag off my arm, but that's neither here nor there. And I kept walking. I didn't intend to go to Dealey Plaza that day. I just wanted to get close enough to the president so that I could get pictures with my new camera. And so I kept walking and looking up the side streets and looking up the side streets and looking up the side streets, and you couldn't get anywhere close to the sidewalk, to the curb, nowhere close. So if Dallas really hated President Kennedy like the press said back then, I sure hope we never get a president here that we love, because you won't even be able to land a plane in left field. And I kept walking, and finally I get to Houston Street, and I look. And they said, well, how did you know which way they were going that day? Well, like I said, I'm blonde, but I didn't fall off the turnip truck. The people were lined up that way. So even I could figure that out. So I just walked across the triangles and got down there to where I'm standing right there. Now, there has been controversy all of my life since 17 years of age. Or is that really Beverly down there? That wasn't her. I dare anybody to say that profile right there is not mine. That's my profile. Those are my feet, and I'll show you those shoes after a while. And the reason why I was called the babushka lady is because of that scar right there, that scarf. A man named Dick Sprague, who was with the House Select Committee on Assassinations, dubbed me the babushka lady. That is a babushka scarf. And so that's what I was dubbed for many years. I never wanted to be brought into the public eye over the assassination of President Kennedy. Number one, I was scared to death to do that. And I don't know if I have these on my PowerPoint or not, but I do have death threats, and I have a big thing here if y'all want to look at it after the presentation with lots of documents that we won't have time to go over tonight. And I was so excited that day. I had a brand new Yashica movie camera right there. And I was just, I can't tell you how thrilled I was. And I walked and walked and walked, and I got down there, and I went across there, and I got right up next to the curb. Wasn't anybody between me and the curb. And the only way I can explain Dealey Plaza to you that day was, have you ever been in a situation where there was so much static electricity or so much excitement that it literally made the hair on the back of your neck or your arms stand up? Well, that's the way it was in Dealey Plaza that day. And you could tell when the president was getting closer because the crowds got louder and louder and louder as he got closer. And then he turned off a main street and took a right onto Elm, and the crowd just went crazy. And then he gets to Elm Street and he makes a left. And shortly after he makes a left onto Main Street, there was a noise. And the noise went bang, bang, bang. And I remember thinking that day, who in the world, do you remember those poppers, you people that are over 50, that you just throw against the ground and they explode? Well, that's what I thought they had. And I thought, who in the world would let their children bring something like that down to a crowd like this? And then just as the president got past me, and let me go back. Just as he got past me, there was a ba-boom. And when that ba-boom happened, the whole back of President Kennedy's head went up, out, over the back. It looked like a bucket of blood had been thrown out the back of his head. I'm going to skip ahead for just a little bit now because I need to do that for myself. This was a picture taken of me by Jack Ruby at the Continental bus station as he walked me back to get back home when I was a child. And that was in the Carousel. This was when I worked at Six Flags Over Texas, the second year they were there. And I put these in here because that happens to be the dark wig I had on that day. And that'll become a little more interesting in a little bit. This is what I looked like back then. We'll go past that one. And this is my first husband, George Albert McGann, who was the alleged leader of the Dixie Mafia. I married him in '66. This is Larry Ronco Jr., the person who gave me the camera that I was using down there that day. And he was the manager of the Kodak exhibit at Six Flags. And this is another picture of Larry, or Lawrence Taylor Ronco, right there, me and another couple. And he had gone up to Rochester, New York, where he lived, and came back home. And when he came back home, he had this beautiful new camera for me. It was a Yashica movie camera. It was an experimental prototype camera. It took a square magazine. It was so experimental, I could not go down and drop my film off at the corner drugstore and get it back in a week. I had to mail it to Rochester, New York in a special envelope that he brought me. And it's so interesting when I do schools and stuff, the kids, one of the first questions they ask is, why didn't you look at the video? They just barely had movie cameras on. We didn't have videos. But this was right after they turned onto Elm Street from Houston Street. And this is some frames I'm going to share with you from the Zapruder film. And I'm just going to flip through them. Now, that is me coming up behind, Josh, I can't think of his name. Coke, what's his name? Anyway, that's him and his son, Chuck Brim. Chuck Brim and his son, and that's me behind him, still taking pictures. And I started filming in concert with the motorcade. And I'm not going to show you the headshot right now. I will in a minute. This is Jean Hill coming into the picture right there in the red coat. She's known as the Lady in Red. Unfortunately, she's dead now too. This picture is one that Mary Mormon took. It's the Polaroid, the famous Polaroid that she took. And they can never doctor it, and the reason why is because that is Jean Hill's thumbprint right there. Remember how you pull the pictures off and you had to put this stuff on them and you had to wait for it to dry? Well, when Jean Hill, Mary's friend, reached over to get it, she touched it with her thumb. So this is one piece of evidence that we know is just exactly right. Hasn't been tampered with, can't be tampered with. And there's some things that I take exception to down at Dealer Plaza now. One of them is where they have the X's. If you notice, he's been shot in the throat here. He's like this. But he's not been shot in the head, at least completely. Here are those steps that you see going up to the pergola. And so the front of the car was not way up here where they have it. It was right down there, almost to the steps. But one of the things that interests me about this particular picture is I think that the shot had already gone into the side of his head and was beginning to, it made its travel and was fixing to come out right there. See that pump knot? That's not coming from the school book depository. The school book depository is up here. And so that's not where that came from. This was right after the president was shot. And you see where I'm standing. I had walked around, I was filming, so I moved in concert with the motorcade. And there I am, and there's those steps I was telling you about. So he was just right there when he was actually shot. And everybody hits the ground. This is Jean and Mary Mormon. This is Chuck Brim and his son. These are the Newmans over there. Everybody hit the ground except who? The blonde. I was so shocked. I could not move. They might as well have shot me for what it did to me. Finally, this is the school book depository building where they say that the shots came from. This was taken just seconds after the assassination. There goes the police cars, the police are out trying to talk to people and stuff. This is the 6th floor right there. The building where Oswald was supposed to have fired all the way down here like this out of that window, which if you'll notice is what? Half closed. See that window? Half closed. Actually a little more than half. So how did he get this shot down? I don't know, excuse me. And another interesting thing about this slide is that this is a tree that's across the street from the school book depository door. I think this is one of the most indicting pictures that we have. This is that tree that I just showed you. Where is everybody running? Are they running toward the book depository building? No, they're running toward the grassy knoll. These are men that were standing up underneath that tree directly across the street from the school book depository. But there they go up to the grassy knoll. Gee, I wonder why. Again, there's the school book depository and the tree. And there they are again, because I just wanted to emphasize that this is a close-up of the 6th floor book depository building. And it's, you can't, even if you were a good shot, you can't get the angle out of that window. It just doesn't work. It doesn't, even as a blonde, that does not commute to me, does not make, 2 and 2 doesn't make 4 in that. Finally, I came out of my shock and walked across the street. And I stood around because I was expecting them to want to talk to me. I had seen them take a couple of people aside and talk to them. And I think, well, surely they're going to want to talk to me in a minute. So I stood there for a little while. And at this time, I've gotten my bag out from under the coat. And it's right there on my shoulder because I got a battery out to make sure that it was still, I had enough battery power. And I'm standing there and standing there and standing there, and I saw people that I knew. I saw a policeman named Roscoe White, who is married to Geneva White, who was the hostess for Jack Ruby. I know that's who I saw that day because I saw him every night as I went over the last show. We staggered our shows with the Theater Lounge, the Colony Club, and the Carousel Club, and we staggered the shows so the patrons could make all 3 shows. They could start here and wind up here and then go back over there for the next show. And I recognized him, and I made eye contact with him, and I knew that he knew who I was, even though I had on a black wig, because he was used to seeing me in red hair, pink hair, green hair, whatever I decided to put on that day. And I know that he recognized me. So at that point, I felt the liberty to leave Dealey Plaza because, you see, we had no way of knowing what had happened to the president. And in my gut of guts, I so hoped that it wasn't him that got shot, even though I knew it was. I didn't want it to be. So I get back to the garage, and I get in my car, and I drive down to 75, down Jackson to 75. And do y'all remember the old Holiday Inn that used to be down there in downtown, just out on 75? That was a, one-story, one-level, old-timey motel. I got to that point when I heard the radio. My radio finally started working out of an old car, and it didn't work downtown. And I heard the news that my president had died. And I pulled over into that parking lot because I didn't trust myself to drive. I was crying so hard. And I don't know how long I stayed there and cried, but I got home, and my brother was sitting in the living room and cleaning his gun. And he looked at me just as point blank as he could, and he said, "I thought I might need this." That's all he said. I went back to my bedroom. I took some Tuinol sleeping pills and knocked myself out. I woke up and called my boss in time to tell him I wasn't coming to work that night at the Colony Club. He didn't like it. He says they were open that night, but I don't remember anybody being open in downtown on the 22nd, but I won't argue the point. It doesn't matter. I wasn't there. And the next day, and that afternoon, though, my mother had woke me up because she wanted to go down and see the flowers, and my mother didn't drive. She never did drive. And so I did take her down there that afternoon, and we took pictures, and I have those pictures if you want to see them. They're going to be printed in Robert Grodin's new book that's coming out hopefully in about 4 months. I've never given anybody the privilege of using those pictures before. And the next day, I was keeping myself drugged up, and the next day my mother woke me up again. She said, "I want to go down and see the flowers again." So I took my mother down there on Saturday to see the flowers, and or Sunday. And then I went back to bed. Saturday night when I went back to bed, I knocked myself out again with Tuinols, and I woke up on Sunday morning, and my husband, who's right down there in the red coat, stand up, Charles. That's my handsome husband of almost 43 years. And I still to this day sleep with my TV on. And it drives him nuts, but he doesn't sleep, but I do. And I woke up to a horrendous thing on television. Was my friend Jack Ruby shooting a man on TV, national TV, whom 2 to 3 weeks before in his club, the Carousel Club, had introduced this man to me as my friend, Beverly. This is my friend Lee Oswald. He's with the CIA. Well, at 17, I didn't know what the CIA was. At 66, I'm still not sure what the CIA is. I didn't think anything about it because Jack was always introducing this guy and that guy and this guy and that person. He was a name dropper. But I did recognize that guy that he shot on TV as the person he introduced me to as my friend Lee Oswald with the CIA. Well, I can tell you that really put the fear of God in me. Finally, my mother, who was pretty wise, realized that I was doing drugs. And she made me get up on Monday night, and she said, "You are going to go to work. You're not going to stay here and become a vegetable. You are going to work." So I drug myself out of bed, I got dressed, and I arrived at the club at 7:45 like I always did. And there was 2 men on the landing. When you went to the Colony Club, there was a stairway, a landing, and another stairway, and into the club. And there was 2 men waiting on that landing, but I didn't think anything about it because a lot of times people would wait there for the rest of their people to show up. But as I approached these 2 men, the taller one stepped forward, and he said, "Miss Oliver," and I said, "Yes, sir." He introduced himself, and he said, "I'm with the FBI." He had proper FBI identification. He said, "We understand that you were down at the Grassy Place." They didn't call it they didn't call it Dealey Plaza. They said the grassy place, taking pictures when the president was killed. I said, yes, sir. He said, where is the film? Have you had the film developed yet? I said, no. He said, where's the film? I said, it's in my camera. He said, well, where is your camera? I said, in my makeup kit. We always carried train cases with us that had our makeup in it. He said, well, we want to take that film and get it developed and look at it for evidence, and we'll get it back to you in a few days. Well, unfortunately, laying next to my camera in that train case was a Prince Albert can full of marijuana. Now, those of you who know the history of Dallas knows that in a few years earlier than that, I think it was 58, Candy Bar was arrested and sentenced to 15 years in the penitentiary for less than a half an ounce. And I had a whole Prince Albert can full. So when they asked me for my camera, I stooped down, opened the lid up where it's pointing toward them, took the makeup tray out, handed it to the FBI agent named Regis Kennedy, and handed him the camera and put the tray back in like that, because I would have given him my soul if it asked for it, just to keep him from looking in my makeup kit. And he said, well, we're going to take this film and look at it, and we'll get it back to you in a few days. That was November the 25th, 1963, and no one has seen my film since. It must have been a pretty good film. That's me across the street, and I'm going to show you something. I usually do it later on, do it now. See those shoes right there? Right there? Here they are. There they are. And I have a little deformed toe that you can see it when you're up closer to it, that makes a little mark on my shoes. Right there they are, just like in the picture. Also, an interesting thing, I had yellow paint on the bottom of them. There was some new yellow stripes painted on the curbs that day. There's a close-up of the shoes. If you want to see them afterwards, you're welcome to. I described the policeman that I saw on the knoll that day back in 69 or 70, I don't remember now. I told them that he had on a Dallas policeman's uniform partially. He had on policeman's pants, he had on a policeman's shirt, he had a badge, but he didn't have a hat and he didn't have a gun. Everybody thought I was a crazy little 17-year-old, or however old I was then, and got a lot of flack over it. Well, a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, this picture showed up from, it's a still off of the, can't think of the man's name right now. Anyway, it's a film off of another person who was down there, and they took this still and sent it to me. This is behind the fence, and these people had run up the grassy knoll, up the pergola steps. You see this man right here? He's a Dallas policeman. There's another one. I saw two there that day. The other one was Patrick Dean. He has on a badge, but he doesn't have on a gun belt, and he doesn't have on a hat. So I feel a little vindicated now. This showed up on the 25th. It's an FBI document, memorandum, and it says one of the, let me just read it off of here because I can read it better. Maybe. It says one of the 35-millimeter color slides depicted a female wearing a brown coat taking pictures from an angle which would have undoubtedly included the Texas School Book Depository building in the background of her pictures. Her pictures evidently were taken just as the president was shot. Approximately 5 other individuals in the photo were taking pictures at the time. And if you notice, that was the morning of the 25th, and my film was confiscated the evening of the 25th. I think that's a little bit too much coincidence. I have never made an actual request for my film because I'm scared to. But other people have. And this was made by a man named, I don't know what his name was now, Woods, Mr. Woods. He specifically asked for my film, and they said, and it is an FBI letter, it says the film which was taken by Beverly Oliver was not retained by this office. Doesn't say supposedly been taken, claimed to have been taken. The film which was taken by Beverly Oliver was not retained by this office. Retain, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it means to keep in possession or use. According to the World Book Encyclopedia Dictionary, the word defined as to continue, to have, or hold, keep. Does that mean they ran it across the hall so they could say that? This is a Texas Monthly that was a man named Gary Cartwright. Let me go back. A man named Gary Cartwright writes several articles even today for Texas Monthly. And I believe this was I don't remember when it was, but anyway, he actually used to believe in the single bullet theory. And he even wrote articles about the single bullet theory. And then in 1990, he wrote this article, and there's a little inset in this article. My friend Bud Shrake. Now, some of you will remember the name and some of you won't. He used to be the main squeeze of our former governor, Ann Richards, who shared an apartment with me on Cole Avenue in 1963, recently refreshed my memory. Ruby and other characters from the Carousel Club, including an unforgettable stripper named Jada, who, by the way, no one saw after the assassination, hung around our apartment. After the assassination, Jada told us Ruby once introduced her to Lee Oswald at the Carousel Club. While they were having drinks, Beverly Oliver, a singer from next door Colony Club, stopped by and was also introduced. For some reason, I chose to forget Jada's story when I wrote about Ruby in 1975. Jada is dead now, but I phoned Beverly not long ago and asked her if she remembered. Sure do, she said. Ruby introduced him as my friend Lee Oswald, or Lee from the CIA. So when people say that there were a lot of things that some of us witnesses have changed our story, no, we have never changed our story. People don't report it accurately, but he did. This is a man named Timo McConan. He is the Geraldo Rivera of Finland, Texas. Gee. And in 1994, I think it was, he brought me out to Ranger, Texas, some photographs that he claims are from my film. I cannot vouch for his veracity, and he's had a major stroke now. But I want to share those pictures with you, and you can draw your own conclusions. This is Dealey Plaza. It's an air shop. A man named Orville Nix had a camera down there that day, too. Orville Nix was standing right here. The president was shot right here. And Orville Nix himself says that he did not get the headshot. These are the 4 stills that this man was able to get out of a film in a safe in New York City in the UTI building. Another author told him how to get there and where they were and how to find them and what to do. He was to say that he was a foreign film company making a documentary on how to restore old films. Do you see anything right up there? Do y'all see that? Okay. These are film stills off the Zapruder. There he is, still up there. Do you see? And you know that it's a person because of the flesh tones. Okay, he's up on the running board of I think it was a Rambler station wagon. The president has just been shot. See that bunch of blood right there? And then it went up and out and over the car, and it looked like a whole bucket of blood was being thrown out of his head. See how that gun is following the car? Did you notice that? And if you ever wondered what Mrs. Kennedy was doing crawling out the back of the car, she wasn't trying to get away. There was a piece of his skull on the back of the car that she got in her hand. And according to Clint Hill, her security man, she tried to put his head back together all the way to Parkland Hospital. The next slide that I'm going to show you is breathtaking. It is a digitized inch by inch piece of this right here that you're seeing. Does that look like it's in the school book depository building?
Amateur cameraman, Orville Nix.
This
standing
is
on the opposite side of the road to Abraham Zapruder.
The remarkable thing about the Nix film is that without
see, they're
realizing
saying it's the
he
Nix
captured
film, but
the
I showed you where
gunman on
Nix was
camera.
standing.
And it's only with the latest image-enhancing techniques that we can reveal the previously undetected contents of his film. Clearly, the presidential limousine is in the foreground. Behind, the grassy knoll on which Zapruder is standing. And to the left of the monument, at the top of the knoll, a figure apparently in a firing position, close to an estate car. Comparisons with another amateur film shot seconds after the assassination reveal that the man and the car have gone.
Amateur cameraman, Orville Nix.
I'm just going to play one more time so you can see the end of it again.
To Abraham Zapruder.
The remarkable thing about the Nix film is that without realizing it, he'd captured the gunman on camera. And it's only with the latest image-enhancing techniques that we can reveal the previously undetected contents of his film. Clearly, the presidential limousine is in the foreground. Behind, the grassy knoll on which Zapruder is standing. And to the left of the monument, at the top of the knoll, a figure apparently in a firing position, close to an estate car. Comparisons with another amateur film shot seconds after the assassination reveal that the man and the car have gone.
Now, I want to ask you a question, and I do want you to raise your hands. How many people in here have ever seen the Zapruder film? Raise your hand. Okay, for those of you who have not, we're going to play it. And if there's a child in here, is she okay? Because I don't normally play this where there's children because it is horrendous. Let's go ahead and play the...
Another guest we have, Robert Grodin, who was celebrating his 18th birthday on the 22nd of November in 1963. He was profoundly touched by the president's death, and he desperately wanted to understand how it could have happened. For 2 years, he, like most Americans, believed in the official version, the Warren Commission version of what happened, but the day he first saw that 8mm Zapruder film, that amateur film that was made, that was the day he stopped believing. Robert, welcome, and I wish you could set up the Zapruder film a bit for us, and we'll get right into it.
Okay. Abraham Zapruder was a Dallas dress manufacturer, and it was pure accident that he brought the camera with him that day. He almost didn't. And he was looking for a good vantage point, and he picked a point on Elm Street in Dealey Plaza in downtown Dallas. As the motorcade passed in front of him, he got what is, frame for frame, the most valuable historical document of all time.
It's become very chic among television producers to put a disclaimer at the head of any film. The film you're about to see might be shocking, it might be horrifying, you might not want your kids to watch it, and I think the unfortunate net effect of that is to make more people watch it. Well, I'm telling you right straight out that if you are at all sensitive, if you're at all queasy, then don't watch this film. Just put on the late night movie because this is very heavy. It's the film shot by the Dallas dress manufacturer Abraham Zapruder, and it's the execution of President Kennedy. And Bob and Dick, would you please narrate what we're seeing as we show this film?
This is commercial footage leading into Dealey Plaza. This is the car on Main Street.
So this film was taken by actual newsmen. This was spliced together with the Abraham Zapruder film?
Yes.
All right, so this is the beginning of the motorcade.
Okay, what you're seeing now is in slow motion so that you can grasp what is happening. This is a film taken by Marie Muchmore that leads into the Zapruder film. It's for time continuity. The president is waving to the crowd here.
And Jacqueline Kennedy, of course, is sitting alongside him in the open car.
Right. This is from Orville Nix's film. This is originally 8mm footage. And they're heading now toward Elm Street. They're on Houston Street now. They're going to make a left-hand turn. It's on the corner where they're going to make the turn there that the book depository was. Now, this is the Zapruder film.
Okay, so the cars are coming along now into Dealey Plaza?
Yes, these are the lead motorcycles of the motorcade.
All right, now with the President and Mrs. Kennedy is also Governor Connolly.
Right. Now, before he goes behind the sign, the President is waving to the crowd. When he comes out from behind the sign, he is shot, then Governor Connolly is shot.
He's already been hit.
He's already been hit.
And now?
And at the bottom of the screen, the headshot.
That's the shot that blew off his head. It's the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in the movies.
Now, the Warren Commission said that all of the shots were fired from behind by Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone assassin, firing at the President. And as you can see, clearly, the head is thrown violently backwards, completely consistent with the shot from the front, right. Now, this is an extreme blow-up of just the President from the film.
All right.
Coming out behind the sign, he's shot.
He's hit from
He's hit here.
From the front, too.
From the front. Now, Jackie doesn't realize what's happened yet. She goes to his aid.
And now? He's hit from...
Again, the violent backward motion. Totally consistent with 80% of the witnesses, which said the shot came from the grassy knoll in front and to the right.
It's interesting to note how many people is running towards where most folks thought the shots came from.
The head goes backwards in the next film from the other side of the street.
Oh, God, that's awful. That's the most upsetting thing I've ever seen. We'll talk about it in a minute.
How many of you believe that shot came from the 6th floor book depository building? Anybody? I was standing so close to him that whenever he was shot in the head, I heard Jacqueline Kennedy say, "Oh my God, he's been," and I couldn't tell if he said hit, if she said hit or shot. When he went forward, she pulled him forward, pushed him down with her elbow, and crawled out over the back of the car. That's the first time he went violently forward. She pulled him forward. And then, I didn't hear this, but we know from other library recordings that's been released from certain other presidents that Connolly said, "Oh my God, they're going to kill us all. They're going to kill us all." I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit because this just has to do with the verification of my film, and if you don't believe it was mine by now, you're never going to believe it. So I'm always asked why the president was killed. I don't know. I'm not a researcher. I'm just an eyewitness. And I don't know all the theories. I don't want to know all the theories because, like I said, someday I hope to get on a witness stand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And I don't want what I saw to be adulterated with what Gene Hill saw or Mary Mormon or the Newmans or anybody. I want it to be my testimony. So when I go speak at symposiums, I don't go in and hear those other people talk. If it has anything to do with Dealey Plaza, now I've had the honor, and it is an honor, to be able to speak on symposiums with Dr. McClellan, who was the person who was at the head of Kennedy when his hand went in, and he said, "Oh my God, he doesn't have a brain." And he still has the shirt that he wore that day completely covered in Kennedy's blood. And I do count it a privilege to be able to hear him, but what I saw doesn't involve what he saw. And so I will go with him. But Kennedy had done several things that ticked a lot of people off. And one of the things that he was doing that I think myself had something to do, one of the reasons that he was killed, there were several reasons. That's why it's hard to really pin it down like we want to without the documentation that still has not been released. There's still over 1 million documents, even by 2 presidential orders and the Assassination Records Review order, to absolutely turn everything over that has anything to do with the assassination of President Kennedy unredacted. And I challenge you today to go and present a FOIA, ask for a Freedom of Information Act on Roscoe White, and see what you get. You'll get it, 1 paragraph, and everything else is redacted. They're absolutely teetotally disregarding 2 presidential orders and the Assassination Records Review order to turn it over. And by the way, the Assassination Records Review Board came up that there was more than 1 gunman. More than 1 gunman means what? Conspiracy. Right? Right. One of the things that President Kennedy did See right up here on this dollar? It says Federal Reserve Note. Now, do you know that we don't own our money? It's owned by the Federal Reserve Bank. We do not, even though it's called Federal Reserve Bank, our federal government does not own one iota of stock in the Federal Reserve Bank. How many of you knew that? We don't own our money. President Kennedy was doing away with the Federal Reserve notes, the Federal Reserve Bank. He was nullifying it. So he called in those Federal Reserve notes, reissued money, United States notes. And I have the actual originals to those in my book if y'all want to see them after a while. See that? United States notes. United States notes. And all three of these were 1963 issues. This was me when we were doing the book, and I actually got to go kneel on President Kennedy's grave and put flowers on it. They wouldn't let Coke or Charles or my daughter go. And that was a big honor for me. Now, one of the questions that particularly the young people ask me all the time is, what has the death of a president, be 50 years next year, 49 years ago, November the 22nd, what has it got to do with us today? When you go and get a loan on your car, who controls the interest rate? Federal Reserve. When you go buy a house, who controls the interest rates? Your credit card, who controls the interest rate? That's right. So it's very important that they be knocked down in 1962, but they weren't, because the one thing that Johnson did when he came back in the office was he gave the money back to the Federal Reserve Bank, and he escalated the Vietnam War. He sent ground troops in. I believe with all my heart that if President Kennedy had lived, there would not be 50-some-odd thousand names on a black wall in Washington, D.C. We're short that many men because President Kennedy was killed. Do you think freedom is free? It's not. I believe that if President John Fitzgerald Kennedy God bless America and protect all those fighting for us today. Our freedom is at stake. Everything that we believe in as a country is at stake. And I do believe with all my heart and soul that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please pray with me that justice someday for our president will be found. We need to know the truth, because the truth will set us free. The truth shall set us free. I want to close my presentation tonight, and I'll take questions and answer the questions in just a minute. But each year, almost every year, sometimes I miss, like I'm missing this year, I am honored to sing at Dealey Plaza for the memorial service of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And they have a little program down there, and I start the program off by singing the Star-Spangled Banner and a couple of patriotic songs. But at 12:30, when the president was shot, no matter who's speaking, I step up to the microphone and I sing what was supposed to be, and I believe it was, President Kennedy's favorite song. And I want to share that with you tonight, just like I do at Dealey Plaza. And I'm going to do it a cappella, like I do most of the time. And if you've ever seen The Men Who Killed Kennedy, then you know what I'm going to sing. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. His grace hath brought me safe thus far. His grace will lead me on. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace. Thank you. There's just so much to tell. I always leave out something. Saturday night, I was, before the assassination, on the 21st, I was with Jack Ruby at the what? No, the club, at the Cabana, but what's the name of the club? Anyway, the big supper club there. Yeah, the Bon Vivant. Yeah, and then we were there for dancing and drinks, and there were several people there with us. One man's name was Lawrence Meyer, and for some reason Jack Ruby called him Mr. Meyer all night long. There's another guy that I was introduced to as Jack Lawrence, and we stayed for a little while. I was dancing with Jack Lawrence most of the time, so I don't know what the conversation was, but we get back to the table, and Jack says, Mr. Lawrence wants steak, so we're going to go out to the Egyptian Lounge, Campese's Egyptian Lounge, because they did have the best steaks in Dallas back then. They still have very good steaks. And so we all went out there, and at one point in time, they got up and went to the office to make a phone call. They said they're calling somebody. Came back in, a few more gracious things were said, and we left, and we went back to the hotel. And it was close to midnight, so I went into the bathroom at the Cabana Hotel, changed my clothes to go to a party in Fort Worth that night. No, it was not at the Cellar. It was another party. It was a private party. And that's what I was doing in Fort Worth. And the next morning, I rode the cab back to Dallas and picked up my stuff and went down to Dooley Plaza.
I'm from New Orleans. In New Orleans, the deal is Carlos Marcello.
Yes.
Put the head out, and he needed a patsy. That was Lee Harvey Oswald. And then the next day, you have to kill him, so we'll never hear this story again, or we'll kill you. But the deal is, Carlos Marcello promised John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, since you're trying to deport me and do all these other things, I will kill both of you. Now, that's the story back in New Orleans.
Yes, and I believe that the mob definitely had something to do with the assassination, but I don't believe they're the ones who pulled it off. I think that it had to be some type of military coup from somewhere. And don't get me wrong, I am very patriotic, and when I say the government, I don't mean the government, I mean rogue elements within the government. I still cry when the flag goes by. But Marcellus had a thing over his desk, a sign over his desk that said, the only way two people can keep a secret is if one of them is dead. Now, the man who took my film, his name was Regis Kennedy. He was an FBI agent. He was sent to Dallas on the 25th, the morning of the 25th, to be one of the field agents in Dallas investigating the assassination of President Kennedy. Regis Kennedy was also the FBI agent that they sent to New Orleans to investigate Carlos Marcellus, who went back to the government and told him, oh, he's just another tomato salesman. But I believe that Lee Harvey Oswald is exactly what he said he was. He was a patsy. And I do believe with all my heart that Jack Ruby shot him to shut him up.
Can you tell them about the trip that you took with Ruby to New Orleans?
Yes, that was, I'm going to say probably June or July, I don't remember exactly when, before the assassination. Jack asked me to go to New Orleans with him to the show bar. You'll remember where that is. And he was going to look for some new showgirls, and that's how Jada got down here. He hired Jada that week. And he was looking for an assistant manager for his club. And so wouldn't you expect, if you heard him say this, that he went to New Orleans to hire showgirls and to find an assistant manager for his club? And then about September, this weird-looking guy, I mean, there's no way, unless you see a picture of David Ferry, could anybody ever explain to you what he looked like. But if you saw the JFK movie, Joe Pesci didn't do a good job on the way he looked. Let me tell you, this guy was freaky looking. He had alopecia, so his hair was falling out, not just like here. It was just in chunks over his head. So his hair was all spiky, and back then spike cuts weren't in style. And he had no eyebrows, so he took like a coal pencil and drew his eyebrows in a half moon over his face. And he had a little beaky nose. I always said, when they asked me to describe him, I said he looked like a buzzard. And that's what he did. Well, this man starts showing up about September, and he would stand at the door. He would greet people. Back then, I don't know how many of you were from Dallas back then, but Dallas in 1963 was BYOB, which means bring your own bottle. We didn't have liquor by the drink until 2 or 3 years later. And we didn't have microwaves back then, but all the bars had little bar pizzas and those little ovens, little cabinet ovens that you stuck them in, broiled them, took them out, took them to the customers. He'd help himself to the pizzas. He would help himself to Jack's private selection. Now, Jack didn't drink, but he kept stuff there like scotch, mostly scotch. That's why I hated the Kennedys so bad, because I got a portion of his scotch. And this guy would go help himself to the liquor behind the bar like he owned the place. So did I have a right to believe he was an assistant manager? I thought he was.
One last thing I want you to tell them is when you mentioned that Jack hated the Kennedys, but the press has said he loved the Kennedys. That's why he killed Ruby.
He loved Jacqueline. He thought she was a lady of class. But that story about him killing Oswald so that she would not have to come back for a trial, that was a bunch of hogwash. He absolutely said, I hate John Kennedy. I hate his so-and-so Bobby. And he said, and I hate, no, I'm not going to say the words he said, their daddy even more than them put together. He didn't say anything about Ted. But those three he hated with a passion. And I joke about it because, you know, even to this day, the Kennedy family gets a portion of every bottle of scotch you buy. They brought scotch to the United States, and they still get a percentage of every bottle of scotch that's sold in the USA.
Questions?
Well, I just want to say, if people are really interested in the Federal Reserve, there is a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which will give you the whole history of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a private business. Right. If you don't believe me, just go to the telephone book. It's not in the government agency. It's right behind Federal Express. You'll find Federal Reserve.
I won't tell you all about my background, but I did go to school in Rochester, New York. And in the process, spent a lot of time with Kodak scientists and would-be scientists. And what you say about the film, that it could have been experimental.
It was.
And I believe that wholeheartedly, and that gives credibility to what you're saying. That the camera and the film was given you in instructions that it had to be processed by Kodak for it to possibly even exist. My question is, that when the film was taken from you along with the camera...
The camera wasn't taken.
The camera wasn't, but the film
was. It was stolen
in
1977.
Did the FBI agent know that that was experimental film? Because this is true. Kodak would send film out all the time to people and cameras to try new, not only new film, but new chemicals that would process that film. And if you took it down the corner drugstore, it could destroy the film very easily. Did they know that this was experimental film?
I didn't tell them that, but it was very obvious that they had never seen it before because it was the first magazine-loaded camera, the square plastic magazine. That you did have to still turn it over, but it was in a plastic square magazine. So I'm sure that they knew, and it said on there, you know how it says Kodak and Rochester, New York, and the address on all of their film did back then. And so I'm sure that's where they sent it.
It could have been a cover-up, too. They could have messed up and tried to process it themselves and destroyed the film.
Oh, I doubt that.
You doubt it?
I doubt that.
You think this gentleman was credible?
I do.
Okay, good.
Thank
you very much.
I don't know if you noticed or not, but the portion of that I thought was my film and still think it was my film, which Robert Groden, a dear friend of mine who was on the Geraldo show, doesn't think it was my film. But like I said, Nix was standing up at the corner of Main and Houston. I was down at the pergola. That picture was not taken. That film was not taken from up there at Main Street, and there was no way he could have taken the film that he did take that you saw, which was also black and white, make it all the way down there by the time the headshot was done. Couldn't do it. Physically impossible.
I would like to know, of all the people that were out there, and you were out there, how did the FBI know who you were and that you took these pictures? And they knew how to find you, because you said it was it wasn't very long.
It was Monday night, and it's because Roscoe White, who was a Dallas policeman, whose wife worked for Jack Ruby, he knew me. I made eye contact with him, and I knew that he recognized me, and I knew that he would know where to find me if they wanted to question me. I wanted to go find out what had happened to my president. The thing I didn't think through was that the first of the month of November, I gave up my apartment, and I was renting another apartment called Beachview Apartments in Dallas. And my apartment wasn't going to be ready until the 1st of December. So for that month of November the 1st to December the 1st, I had moved out in Garland, Texas with my mama and daddy, and my boss didn't even know where I was staying. So they had to wait till I came to work, and I didn't go to work till Monday night. Now, I want to straighten up about my camera being stolen. My camera, they just took the film out, gave me my camera back. But I gave testimony to the House Select Committee in March of 1977, and I'm not saying this had anything to do with it, but my husband and I are in the ministry now. He's celebrating his 59th year of ordination, May of next year. Or is it 60? 60 years next year. And we were on the road all the time in revivals, like we still do. We drive on a big bus. And we were at his mom and dad's house. I had put a suitcase out in the storage building with a lot of our other stuff. We didn't even have a home for a long time. We call them our porter parsonages. We had buses. We do have a home now. But you remember those round suitcases? I put all my old pictures, that camera, and everything in that round suitcase. We got back home in May, and somebody had broken into that suitcase. We came back home because our little boy died on the road. And I went out there to get that suitcase, and it was gone. And the strange thing is, out of everything, that whole set of Samsonite luggage was there. That was the only one missing. So whether that had anything to do with it, I don't know.
Yes, ma'am. I sure appreciate hearing everything you've had.
Thank you.
Really interested. But one of the critical things I've always wondered about, and since you were there as an eyewitness, could you tell us to the best of your ability exactly how many shots you heard?
You know, I couldn't for a long time because I was in such shock. And I did wipe a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that have come back to my memory over the years that I will not share, because every time I have finished something like a thought and it finally comes together and I ever told anybody, I was accused of changing my story. So what I know is staying with me. But I went under hypnosis. Coke was the witness with the president of the Texas Board of Hypnotists here in Dallas. And did we go 2 sessions, Coke? Was it 2 sessions? 2, and they were recorded because I wasn't taking any chances. I didn't believe in hypnosis, but I was willing to do anything. And under hypnosis, I heard 5 shots that went bang, 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 ba-boom. And a little while later, after we did that, he gave me a copy of the tape. And that is the spookiest thing in the world, because when you're hypnotized, It's not, I did such and such, and I went so and so. It's, I'm walking down the street. I'm walking up Commerce. I put the camera in my, it's that day. And at one point, became so hysterical that he had to pull me up above the crowd and look down on the situation. And what they were really trying to do is see if in my peripheral memory, if there was something there that wasn't in my conscious mind.
Do you have any view of Roscoe White's involvement in the assassination or opinion on that?
Would you repeat that, please?
Do you have any input or view of Roscoe White's involvement in the assassination?
As it has turned out, Roscoe White is was a CIA agent. He died in 1977, I think it was, of a very suspicious circumstance because they had called and ordered him to go do something else, and he refused. He had become a Christian, and he said, I'm not going to do it. And so his wife gets a phone call. He says, whoever it was said, either your husband goes and does it, or he won't live to see the sunrise again. The next day, he went to lunch. He was working out in his in a little shop behind his house with a acetylene torch. And he went to lunch, and when he came back, he said, and the reason why I know this is because we're friends with his pastor. And he has 60-some-odd hours of counseling with Roscoe and his wife, Geneva. And he told his pastor that he saw a man leaving the area with a suitcase or with a briefcase, but he didn't think anything about it. He went in and lit up his torch, and it blew up. They thought it would kill him immediately, but he lived 2 weeks, long enough to give a deathbed confession to his pastor.
It appeared that the man on the grassy knoll was in a shooting position. Was it ever determined that he actually held a weapon?
I showed you the blow-up,
right,
the inch by inch.
It didn't show a clear picture of a rifle or a sawed-off shotgun or whatever.
Yeah, it does, and they've identified it as a German Mauser assassin pistol. And the pistol had a handle that came out like this and became a rifle. And if you remember the testimony of the deaf-mute Ed Hoffman, he said, of course he didn't say because he was deaf, but he signed and about how they broke the gun down and put it in the trunk. That's what that gun did. It broke down and went in the trunk.
I just wanted to collaborate your number of shots because I was there on Main Street that day, about at the cross street, just down below Neiman's.
Just below what?
Excuse me?
Just below what? Just
down below Neiman's, right about, I guess the cross street, it would be what, Ackerd? There, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the crowd, it was very crowded on both sides. And there was a guy driving a Cadillac up and down the street. It had Joe's Pond. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
So after the parade went by and after the president went by, we heard the shots, and I heard it just like you. I heard bam, bam, really fast, and then a slight space, then another one, and then a moment later, I mean, just seconds later, there was this huge one, but it could have been two, could have been one, but they were so close and they were louder. Mm-hmm. But I thought, and we thought, that Joe's pawn shop had a flat or a blowout or something, and that's what was causing the noise. And it wasn't until, of course, the crowd rumbled up, that he had been shot. So you did hear, or I'm glad to hear you say that, because I'd always heard, I mean, in my mind, I've lived it over and over again, and the number of shots. And when you said it tonight, it made me feel a lot better to know that I wasn't alone in this.
Well, that's what I heard. And there's still argument about whether the boom boom was one shot or two shots or echoes, but it was definitely two sounds.
Thank you, Beverly, for what you've shared tonight. I wanted to ask you, when you say that the documents have been requested, who has the power to keep those things from the public? What is this, a person? Is this excuse my ignorance, but I don't know how they can keep that from the public. I don't understand that.
They have it locked up. Whoever they are has it locked up. It was 75 years, I think, from the day of the assassination. And, of course, none of us are going to be alive when they are released. And then the people who are left, unless we find somebody to pass the torch to, are not going to care.
Ms. Oliver, great presentation. I am stunned by the photograph of this individual with the weapon. That, if you're looking at that, we've seen this stuff for 49 years. My question is, one, why haven't we seen that before? And then, if you summarize it, you can just look at it and say, there's your answer. But why haven't we seen that photograph on anything, any books, any history channels, or anything?
The only answer that I have is the man Timo Makkonen from Finland was told by Seth Cantor, I finally remembered his name, who's an author that's written some books on the assassination of President Kennedy. He was found down in the ATI building in New York looking at the film, and he was run out. And so he was the one who told Timo Makkonen where the film was, what safe it was in, what canister it's in. Supposedly it's in a big film canister with 6 copies of my film in there. And he told him to go in under the auspices of doing a documentary on how to restore and keep old film footage. And he told him, he said, when you get it out, put it on the roller, which is the thing that they roll it forward to. You get to the headshot and then get as many stills as you can, because when they catch you, they're going to kick you out. And so he was able to get those 4 stills. He came to Ranger, Texas, and scared the mud out of me, and brought that stuff to me. One of the reasons when I talk about being scared, shortly after I was on Geraldo's show and told them I was writing a book, this came in the mail to me. Can you see that? It says death in big black letters. Then a week later, this comes, snitch, you're dead. Both of them mailed from Houston, Texas. At that time, I knew no one in Houston, Texas. I took them to the federal marshal in Lubbock, Texas, and of course they couldn't get anything off them because too many people had handled it. But this is still a very touchy subject.
Have you seen the JFK movie?
Yes,
by
I was a
Oliver Stone?
technical advisor on it.
And is it true to form, pretty much?
I think so.
Pretty accurate?
Not that I don't know that much about the assassination, only what I saw down there, but I know Oliver Stone is so meticulous that how I found, I had never read any books or anything. I didn't know I was in these books, and he sent me down to the JFK Assassination Information Center to do some research. You know what I was researching? The license plate number on the motorcade. I said, Oliver, nobody cares. He said, I do. I do.
There is one part of one of the theories I heard that Oswald was a dishonorably discharged Marine. When he was discharged, the Secretary of the Navy was John Connally.
Mm-hmm.
John Connally is the only one who could have reversed the dishonorable discharge.
Mm-hmm.
How, do you think, in what way other than being a patsy was Oswald involved? Was that the only way he was involved, was being a patsy?
No, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but we do know that Lee Harvey Oswald was a CIA operative. I mean, we've got that information. He has a number, tax number, and everything for CIA. So that was one bit of truth that did come out of Ruby's mouth.
Do I understand you to say that there were no shots that came from the book depository?
No, I don't say that. I just know that the shots that killed the Kennedy, President Kennedy, did not come from the 6th floor.
Okay.
And I'll also imagine this, okay? He's in the 6th floor, right? Or somebody's in the 6th floor in that corner building. They had a whole block of the president coming straight forward, straight to them, not having to shoot through trees and pedestrians and lead him like a duck. Doesn't it make sense that if somebody was in that 6th floor at that end, they would have shot him coming up Houston Street?
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any idea as to why the Connollys never would let the bullet that hit Connolly be taken from his body, even at his death?
The shrapnel, at his death, it was...
Not only shrapnel, but there is a bullet, an actual bullet. Shrapnel and a bullet.
There's shrapnel, but not a bullet.
She and Nellie Connolly would not allow that to be taken even at his death.
Yeah, that was shrapnel from supposedly that that pristine bullet, that single bullet that went to Six Flags, did a U-turn, came back and hit Connolly after it went through President Kennedy, that bullet. And he had more shrapnel in his wrist than what was off of that bullet. And that's why they would not allow him to remove the shrapnel, to be removed, because it was already determined by x-rays that there was more shrapnel left in his right wrist than what was off that bullet. I mean, don't you wish you could invent a bullet like that? Gee, you'd be a millionaire overnight.
Just over a week ago, I heard Jim Lavelle, who was handcuffed to Oswald, say that for months and weeks he investigated, and he saw no connection whatsoever that Oswald and Ruby knew each other. What is your take on that? I've heard your testimony. Give me your opinion.
Well, Jim and I are very good friends, and for a long time, I took him to lunch once a month. I haven't, for the last several months, since he had his accident, lost his eye, I haven't been able to do it because my schedule has been so busy. But we talk, and he's a very dear friend of mine, and we get along just fine because it's just like I told him. I said, all you know is what you investigated after the fact and what they told you from upstairs. What I know, I saw with my own eyes. Now, how many of you have ever heard the name Jack Revel? Jack Revel was the head of intelligence in Dallas at the time of the President's Kennedy. My cousin. He just died 3 months ago. So I have very close connections with those people, and that's the only thing I can say is that he just knows what he saw after the fact, and he was probably like the Warren Commission, issued some things that he was supposed to come up with, and because I love Jim, and I don't think he would intentionally lie. I just don't believe that he would, because he's a very honorable man, but you know. And some people say, well, you can't count on eyewitness testimony. That's what they always say you can't. All I know is that every big murder case there is, they say, well, we don't have an eyewitness. So I just know what I saw. And I still don't believe that Jim Lavelle would tell a lie intentionally. And I think he really believes what he believes. Now, my cousin, when we were estranged for a long time, and at his sister's funeral, we got back together. His sister, Hallie D, and Hallie D died, and at her funeral, we made amends. And he wanted one of my books. And I said, well, Jack, you know that we're not going to agree on the assassination. And his words to me is, you don't know what I believe, and you might be surprised.
I think, well, first off, I'm 19, so don't think that your torch is going out.
Good.
Because we're
Thank
gladly
you.
taking it.
And thank you for being here.
You're welcome. My big question is, since so many people are getting old and they're passing on, how is it that we're going to see justice? Do you think the people that pulled the trigger, are they still out there? Is this conspiracy a group that needs to be taken down? What's your take on that?
They need to be taken down. Because if it is rogue elements within our government, most of them are still they're gone anyway. You know, they're dead. But somebody knows. And the point is that he was the president of the United States of America. He was not the president of rogue elements within our government. And that is our information. Every single investigation from the Warren Commission, Rockefeller, House Select Committee, and Assassination Records Review Board, they were all paid for with our tax money. That is our information. It belongs to us. And we need to stand up and say so and do everything we can. I'll shout it from the highest hill. I'll scream it from the lowest valley till the day I die.
Amen.
It belongs to us. And the only way they'll shut me up is with a bullet.
Did the Dallas Police Department do their own investigation of the murder, and were you ever contacted by them?
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
No?
But they did to the extent they were allowed to.
And did you ever speak in front of the Warren Commission?
No, but I did give testimony to the Assassination Records Review Board and the AARB. Mm-hmm. The Warren Commission didn't want to talk to witnesses who believed the shots came from the grassy knoll and who would not change their testimony. And some of those who did give testimony, like Jean Hill and Mary Mormon, and I don't remember all their names, but their testimony was altered. So I didn't talk to them. Yes. Oh.
You talk about these documents that you have requested to get copies of or to be seen. Who has the documents and these films? What entity, government agency, individual? Who do you believe has possession
The
of
archives. The archives has most of the records that we want but can't get. They're locked in a special vault, I guess. I don't know.
The National Archives.
But it's
D.C.
You get it by requesting a FOIA, which is a Freedom of Information Act. And with that FOIA request, they're supposed to release it, but they don't.
So how would one follow up on that?
We do. You just get the same answer. You get it back and back and back and back. I've got all kinds of stuff in here where people have requested stuff. And like one of them says that they can't find any reference to me, to Beverly Oliver, or to Mary Mormon. Mary Mormon's the one that took the famous Polaroid picture, but they don't have any reference to her.
My question was, how many times did you see Lee Harvey Oswald in the club? Just the one, or?
No. No, I saw him. That was the first night that I actually was introduced to him. Then I saw him a couple of times at after-hours parties, and then I was there the night, which I wish I had. I might have to get a copy of that from her. Geraldo Rivera also interviewed Wally Weston. Shoemaker was his real last name, and he was the MC at the Carousel Club. And one night, I walked in, it's the last show, and the stand-up comedian, Wally Weston, was doing his stand-up comedian part. And this Lee Harvey Oswald in the back of the room stood up and he said, "I think you're an effing communist," which back in the 60s, that's the worst thing you could call somebody here in America, was a communist. And Wally said, "What did you say?" He said, "I think you're an effing communist," except he said the word. And Wally just put his mic down and put his hand down on the floor and hopped off there and went back there, and he was an amateur boxer. And he drew back and cocked him right in the face. And then Jack Ruby came over there and shook him, and he pushed him down the stairs, and he said, "I told you, you little SOB, don't you come back in this club anymore." Of course, he was back again, but that was an incident that was actually brought out on national television when Wally gave his testimony. And I happened to be in there that night. At the Carousel. How did you?
The 4 stills that were brought to you, I believe, by Timo McConan.
Who's talking? I can't find you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So those 4 stills, have you published those? Are they in your book, or are they published anywhere?
No.
Oh.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. And
I have the originals that he actually brought me, if you'd like to see it afterwards.
Thank you. And I just wanted to pass on something that I came across today. There's an excellent series on the History Channel referred to, The Man Who Killed Kennedy.
Yes.
And
Nigel Turner.
Yes. And when I ordered that set, it has 6 episodes. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's all there was. A couple days ago, someone handed me 2 or 3 more episodes. One called Smoking Guns, about irregularities in the Secret Service. Another called Love Story, about the story of Judith Very Baker, Oswald's girlfriend. And the last one, Guilty Men, which it has quite a bit of information, a surprising amount of information about Texas politics. And it even mentions that party at, I believe, Clint Murchison's mansion.
Yes.
And quite a few people, believable witnesses on camera, testify as to some of the people there. So I would just recommend to people, seek out these missing episodes. I don't know
You
why the
can't
History
get the
Channel,
third one anymore.
That's amazing, though.
The third one has
History
been
Channel.
blocked
How
and
could
barred.
the History Channel do that?
Because
I can tell you why. Go ahead and tell her why.
Tell him.
Mrs. Johnson put a stop to it.
Who's got the microphone and who's saying that? Oh, you said, okay, she did what? Yes, that's what I heard. And Nigel's a very good friend of mine, and he came to my daughter's wedding in 2002 and sat on the couch in the suite that night after the wedding and told us about it, and he's been in hiding ever since, as far as I know. Doesn't return my calls, doesn't return my letters. I can't find anybody that's heard from him. We were good friends.
Hi, I just wanted to tell you had a fabulous voice. Thank you for singing.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you about your singing career, how that started, and how long you have been a performer.
I sang my first song in public when I was 3 years old at the First Assembly of God Church in Garland, Texas. Now, back then, Assembly of God people didn't believe in wearing makeup and watching TV. You couldn't have a TV. They're not like that anymore. And but my babysitter had a TV, and we were very poor growing up. I mean, I didn't have an inside bathroom until I was 12 years old. And there was these beautiful ladies that would sit on the piano with feathers in their hair and these pretty clothes on singing, and they were called saloon singers. Well, one Sunday morning after I got through singing in church, Brother Woods picked me up like this, and he said, "And Beverly, what do you want to be when you get grown?" I said, "A saloon singer." You could hear those people suck air for days. So when I grew up, I was actually 9 years old when I started singing on country western stage shows around Dallas. Y'all remember the Big D Jamboree and the Cowtown Hoedown and those shows? I sang on those starting at the age of 9. And by the time I was 13 years old, I started singing in nightclubs on the weekends. And my mom and dad signed me over to Abe Weinstein when I was 14 years old. Actually 16 years old when they signed the contracts over, because I was so determined to be an entertainer that my daddy felt like, they'd rather know what I was doing, because I'd been sneaking out of the house and riding a bus from Garland, Texas. Y'all remember where the old bus station was? All the way to downtown Dallas, and they thought I was staying with my good friends, Mary Noel Peterson, and back then we didn't have phones, so they didn't have any way to check on me. So when they found out what I was doing, they figured out it was better to know what I was doing, so they basically signed me over to Abe Weinstein. Do you know the story about, I don't know why, I guess it's because of my age that I can't remember, the ambulance driver, Aubrey Wright? Do you know his story? And how they literally took the body away from him in Parkland Hospital and they had submachine guns? I mean, that's not, Mickey Mouse didn't do that. These are very powerful people, whoever they are and wherever they are, they're very powerful.
Let's take a few, go ahead.
And I don't mind telling you, I'm still scared to death of it. I don't want anything to do with it.
Any other questions?
I was just always curious, as powerful as the Kennedys are and Ted Kennedy was, why, if there was a conspiracy, they weren't able to get the information.
Bobby was killed. Joe died. And one word about Ted, capituated. Pardon? Well, Caroline doesn't know. And would you want to know? Someday her mother's tapes are going to come out, long before this is going to come out, and maybe she'll know then. But I wouldn't want to open it up if I were a Kennedy child. We had a friend, I'm not going to mention her name, she was a Kennedy, she was a second cousin to Jack Kennedy, and she was coming down here in Dallas on the 22nd with some of the symposiums and giving her thoughts. She was so much like Jack, it was scary. She could write a speech that'd knock your socks off like that. All you'd have to just walk up and say, "I want you to speak in 5 minutes," and she'd have a speech like that that'd just blow your socks off. And after about 3 years of coming down here, they put a stop to it.
Down here again.
Yes.
On your first of your presentation, you had 4 quick snapshots. About the second slide that you showed when you were younger.
Yeah.
And you ran over them pretty quickly.
Oh, no, you're not going to see that one.
Yeah, well, you ran over one of them pretty quickly. I heard Dixie Mafia in there. Could you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah. In 1966, I married a man named George Albert McGann. And George Albert McGann, according to Captain McCarran of the Dallas Police Station, was the leader of the Dixie Mafia. And the Dixie Mafia was also what they call crossroaders. That was the first beginning of the Mafia that was not really Costa Nostra. They weren't Italian.
Thugs.
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 When We were married 4.5 years, and he was assassinated, shot in the back 4 times, in the abdomen once, in a gangland slaying in Lubbock, Texas.
So why do you think Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald, and how was he able to get all the way down in that garage up to the guy like that without the police being involved?
Well,
maybe I shouldn't have said that.
You just kind of answered your own question. Right. He shot him to shut him up.
On whose order?
I don't know. Don't know if it's the government's, if it was the mob. That's the whole thing about this.
I can answer that question. All the policemen were customers at Ruby's Lounge.
Mm-hmm. But they were also customers at the Carousel Club. At the
Carousel.
Colony Club and at the Theater Lounge. I mean, they let them in free to watch the strip shows, and they had coffee cups. I don't know if it's coffee in there or not. Oh, I've got to answer this question too. I'm disappointed nobody asked it. Usually, the first question when I speak to kids is, "Were you a stripper?" I tell them, "Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I tried it once, and the men in the crowd started yelling, 'Put it back on!' So I knew I better stick to singing."
Ruby used to give the policemen cards, free drinks and free entrance.
But their drinks were always in a coffee cup. Always.
Always.
I want to ask you something later, but one thing I had heard, right here.
Where?
One thing I had heard was that people were saying that Jack Ruby had his dog with him when he went up there, and a lot of people have said that he didn't really plan, that was just something that but because they said he wouldn't have had his dog and left his dog in the truck. And
He took his dog with him and left the dog in the car because then he knew somebody would find Sheba and take care of her. Now, the little dancer, little Lynn, that he supposedly was downtown wiring money to, that y'all have all heard for years and years and years she was dead, she died 2 years ago now. Her son, Michael, called me. We found her in 1990, and then this weird guy found her too and pushed her back underground. But that was all a set-up deal. That was planned long ahead that he would go downtown and wire money to Lynn. Her name is Carlin's her last name.
I'm going to ask the last question. What is your thinking of when Johnny Roselli was found cut up in a barrel, and then also the guy who was supposed to testify before the Senate committee the next day and had an airplane ticket to go to Washington, and he was gunned down in his apartment?
Well, that's just part of the assassination. You know, like, for instance, Roscoe White, who I picked out of a mug book as the person who took my film, really was an FBI agent named named Regis Kennedy. And 6 weeks before he was to go before the House, or the House Select Committee on Assassinations and give testimony about my film, that's what he was being called before the committee for, he died.
And by the way, Dorothy Kilgallen, bless her heart, she was murdered.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she was.
Beverly Oliver, Coke Buchanan, thanks.